Time to set foot inside the morgue with your hosts, Lee, Carl, and Rob.
I'm looking for the warm side of the door, where the fire's bright and it's burning every night. Everybody will be there, and they'll be smiling at me, and I won't need no more on the warm side of the door.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Manchester Movie Morgue podcast. This evening's selection is carrying on with the Christmas festivities, and we're taking a in-depth-ish look at Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984. A hugely controversial release, especially for us in the UK. We didn't get to see it for a long time here. So we're going to try and slice and dice this one and decide whether it should go into the morgue just in time for New Year or if it should escape on our helicopter to freedom. Before we do that, we'll do our usual roundup of what we've been watching lately. And perhaps Lee. Hello, Lee. I hope you had a nice holiday. What have you been watching lately that's caught your attention?
My non-Christmas related stuff that I've been watching. I did watch Home Alone 3, which is pretty terrible. But I won't go into that too much. But Arlington Road is a good one. I can't believe I've never seen that, really, for 1999. Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins. Jeff Bridges plays it's good. He plays a college professor. His wife is an FBI agent who's been killed. And he's obsessed with, in a terror attack, he's obsessed with his next door neighbours, who he believes are could be possible terrorists. And it kind of develops, he's stalking them, really. And there's a twist. I won't really ruin the movie because it's got a controversial part of the movie, but that may sort of slightly anger the viewer. But it's a good movie worth checking out. The other one is a bit more lighthearted. It's Back to School. Rodney Dangerfield, who's known for his one-liners, and it's a typical sort of college lighthearted film. Guy goes back to college with his son there, and his son's a bit of a loser. And it's, of course, as soon as the father arrives, who's very rich, suddenly he becomes the most popular man on campus. And it's a bit like Old School with Will Ferrell. You know, it's a bit along those lines. It's worth a watch. There's plenty of 80s cheese. If you like one-liner comedy, not everybody does, but if you like that kind of thing, that's definitely worth checking out.
Thanks, Lee. I mean, I would recommend both the films you just mentioned. First of all, Arlington Road. I've not seen it for a long time, but it's one of those films that kind of ambles and meanders along pretty well. And then, like you said before, the events of the kind of the final 20 minutes or so just push it out into the stratosphere, and you come away from that thinking, "Well, goodness me, what a film that is."
It needs a sequel, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it really does. I think. Yeah, and it's one of those films that I'm not sure if it's that readily available. I might have to look into that. I'd certainly like to see that one again. And it's funny you mentioned Back to School, because I saw that a couple of years back when it got released on DVD. And just Rodney Dangerfield, he's so funny. I mean, just looking at him, just to watch him kind of move, he's just physically funny. He's got funny bones. There's a really good line, really funny line in that, which I don't think everyone gets it. Is because near the start of the film he's married, isn't he? And his wife's kind of likes.
I think I know which one. Yeah,
quite opulent things, and he finds out his wife's been having an affair, and with this other guy. Anyway, he's kind of a bit disconsolate about it. And anyway, another man comes up to him at this party and points to this painting that's on the wall. It's by Klimt, and and it belongs to his wife. So he says something along the line of, "Oh, your wife has a wonderful Klimt," and he says, "Yeah, you've seen it too, eh?"
And there's another one where he goes, "Yeah, my wife's great. She gives great headache."
Yeah, another one worth a rewatch, definitely. Lee, you've obviously had a very, very very well used festive season.
It was a bit of a palate cleanser after watching Silent Night, Deadly Night. Really, that was well needed.
No, we'll get into that shortly, I'm sure. I'll feel your pain, I think, on that one, but we'll maybe talk about that a bit more later.
Okay.
Rob, apart from the festive Silent Night, Deadly Night. What else have you been looking at the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of good ones actually. I'm gonna miss out all the Christmas dirge I watched, and I'll go straight for. I watched Pixar's latest film, Soul, which is on Amazon at the moment, and it's brilliant. It's just so good. It really hits the feels, and it's about a man who's basically his better days have passed him. He's a musician, jazz musician, and jazz music features all the way through it. Not my bag, but it's you can identify with somebody having a passion, and he gets separated between his body and his soul on his one chance to have a break, and he falls down a manhole, and he ends up in heading to what looks like heaven, but of course he doesn't want to because he wants to do his break. So he gets into this mental system where new souls are born, and there's a soul called 22, and everyone has tried to teach 22 the value of life, and it's about him showing the purpose of life and his appreciation for the little things, which is the key message. And it's such a beautiful film. I mean, you don't need to have kids to watch this. I did watch it, obviously, with my boy, but that's not necessary. It's just such a beautiful film. So that's a good one. Another one I watched was, I'm not sure I'd recommend this, was a Christmas film. It's called Happiest Season. And I think a lot of people are going to like this, or will probably tune in for it because it's got
I've watched that.
The guy from Schitt's Creek's in it, and you think, oh, he's going to be great in it because, of course, he's quite funny, and he basically plays the same character all the time. And it's about two young women who are like in love, and one of them invites the other one to come home for Christmas, and she hasn't come out to her family, and her family's a very privileged family with like somebody running for governorship, and basically it's a big sin, and the comedy ends pretty much within 15 minutes, and it's just like a drama. It really is a drama about, like the politics of being gay and coming out and stuff. And so I was waiting for the chuckles, but there's no chuckles. So to balance that, the big one I would recommend to anyone who wants a good laugh and to appreciate what it's done for the world actually, is to watch the documentary series, The Comedy Store, which Showtime have released 6 episodes. And it is amazing. It goes through.
I need to watch that.
It goes through from right at the beginning, from like early 70s, right through the strikes. Every single comedian you appreciate and enjoy and seen many of the films you watch, you will see the input of that place and what it did, and some of the routines, and seeing the old footage of it. It is so good, and I literally absolutely churned through it. I did an episode a night, and it was done, and it was a brilliant thing to watch. So that's my big Christmas recommendation. That one.
Thanks, Rob. So I will be too. So that's a Comedy Store. You mentioned Soul, and wow, what a recommendation you gave for that. And so I'll be catching that one very soon. I have no doubt.
I'm going to say I'm quite a cynical bugger, but Soul, it really got me. I was like, like when you go quite quiet in front of people and you don't say anything because you're trying to pretend you're all macho about it, but like in fact it really got me. Soul.
Just let it out, man. Let it out. Yeah. That's what it's there for. Okay, don't be no judgment here. We're all film fans and men of the world. So
I've seen some stills from that film, and it just looks absolutely superb, doesn't it? The lighting on it is unbelievably good. So realistic.
It's absolutely stunning. I mean, everyone involved in that. The only thing, I know not everyone's bad. Graham Norton gets a slice in the film.
That's the only thing I've seen because I watched the Graham Norton program a few weeks back. Yes, and lo and behold, they had that scene ready.
Yeah, it does take you out of it a little bit because obviously if you're English and you see him everywhere, and the moment you hear his voice, it takes you out of the film a little bit. But
he's sneaking into a few films here and there, isn't he? Because he was also in the Eurovision movie.
Oh, of course, yeah. So he's got a new agent. He must have because he's left his radio show and going somewhere else. So it's like it's all going for Graham.
Film contracts everywhere. I wonder where it'll be next. It'll be in the next Bad Boys sequel or something like that. So I'm going to choose a festive one just because it was it's a festive film, but I wasn't planning to watch it, but I ended up watching it, and it's called Last Christmas, and it's got Emilia Clarke in it, who's famous from Game of Thrones. And
I've seen it. Yeah.
For some reason, which doesn't really make much sense to me, much use is made of the music of George Michael and Wham. obviously the title. This has worked for other films, and it's sometimes it works well, but here it just seemed like it was shoehorned in for no good reason. And I think for the first half of this film, it's really a bit of a mess. It's like a bit of a train wreck. It's about Amelia Clark, this girl who lives in London, and life's a bit of a mess, and she gets involved with the wrong kind of people, and she's unreliable. And anyway, she ends up meeting this guy who's a bit more of a good egg, a bit more kind of steady, reliable. He seems to be interested in her. And the first part of the film kind of charts their relationship. And it was really, really quite messy up until then. But I think what really saved this film was the we were talking about Arlington Road earlier and the twist in that.
Oh, it's amazing.
There's kind of a twist in this, and I think it really, really worked well. And it's one of those rare things where, the first half of the film is, you think, where is this going? This is going to be awful. And actually, the twist kind of pulls the whole thing back around.
It does save it a little bit.
Yeah. Have you seen it before, Rob?
Yeah, I saw it last year when it came out, and
last Christmas.
Yeah, last Christmas. You gave me a heart, and I just wanted a brooch.
Yeah. And the second film I watched was something on BBC iPlayer called Phantom Thread. And again, it's just a film that kind of was on, and we started watching it. And it's much lauded by everywhere I've read review for this film. Says it's brilliant. Daniel Day-Lewis is fantastic. It's directed by Paul W. Anderson. Apparently, it's Daniel Day-Lewis's last acting role before he retired. It's from 2017, and I don't know if I wasn't in the mood, or I didn't understand parts of it. I didn't see it. It's a film about unpleasant people being unpleasant to each other and kind of accepting it. And I didn't feel it. And maybe I need to watch it again, but I certainly wouldn't put it on my recommendations board. Phantom Thread.
Did it need more tits and go?
Well, I think we're gonna have plenty of that as we go tonight. But yeah, it needs something. It's needed something. Like, nothing happened as well. That was the other thing. It's all the number of times they must have really liked this staircase that they use in the film, this ornate staircase, because the number of times they filmed people coming up it in great detail. It must have been like half the movie. So Phantom Thread, one to avoid. But if you're up for a Christmas film that isn't too taxing and might possibly surprise you come the end of the film, then Last Christmas might be one to go for.
Good.
So that leads us on nicely to our topic of tonight's discussion, 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night. And we'll start by doing what we usually do, and I'll just run through a quick-ish rundown of what happens in the film. So in Silent Night, Deadly Night begins in 1971. Young 5-year-old Billy Chapman, he goes with his family to visit his catatonic grandfather in hospital. Now, Billy's left alone with Grandpa for a few minutes here, away from his parents, when Grandpa, unsurprisingly enough, suddenly awakens and warns Billy about the dangers of Santa Claus, and Santa Claus, who will punish children who've been naughty. On the way back from the hospital, the family stop for a seeming motorist in need who's dressed as Santa Claus. This man ends up killing Billy's parents, but spares Billy and his baby brother. Events now move forward to 1974. Billy and his brother now belong to an orphanage where Mother Superior is a strict disciplinarian, to say the least, and is not sympathetic to Billy's past experiences. One Christmas, she forcibly sits Billy in the lap of visiting Santa Claus, and he flees in horror, punching Santa to the ground. Fast forward 10 years, 1984. Billy's now 18, and he starts a job working in a toy store where things at first seem to go well. But however, it's not long before the festive season kicks in again, and unfortunately, Billy is dressed as the shop Santa Claus, which ultimately sends poor Billy over the edge, and he embarks on a massacre. And after committing several murders, Billy's tracked down to the orphanage, where he's shot and killed by local police, but not before he's declared that the children are now safe because Santa is dead. And that's the basic plot that's the basic plot of Silent Night, Deadly Night. So I have my opinions on this film, and we'll talk about them. But Perhaps Lee, if we start with you, just some initial thoughts about it.
Yeah, I mean, initially I watched the first 15 minutes after a few whiskies, and the grandpa bit had me absolutely crying with laughter because it's so over the top, the acting in it. And the bit, it almost reminded me of a very dark comedy sketch that you'd find in The League of Gentlemen, because he just turns. He turns to as soon as he leave the waiting room or whatever it is, the living room. He just turns to Billy, and it's under his voice, but he almost sounds like he's possessed in a way, isn't he? This the scariest.
It's really telegraphed as well. This scene, isn't it?
Grandpa? Mom!
What do you want her for? She can't help you. Nobody can. You scared, ain't you? You should be. Christmas Eve is the scariest damn night of the year. I'd be scared too if I was you. You know what happens Christmas Eve, don't you? You know all about Santa Claus.
He brings presents to all good boys and girls.
Your daddy told you that, didn't he? Well, I tell you something. Santa Claus only brings presents to them that's been good all year. To the ones that ain't done nothing naughty. Naughty. All the other ones. All the naughty ones. He punishes. What about you, boy? You've been good all year? You see Santa Claus tonight? You better run, boy. You better run for your life.
I think we have another kind of bad parenting award here, don't we, for the parents who against the protestations of the boys say, no, don't leave me with Granddad. Say, no, we'll be fine. We'll go by ourselves and take our baby, and you stay here with Granddad.
Who doesn't want a day out at a mental institution? It's just fun for all the family, really, isn't it? And I also have a theory about this film that pretty much everybody is deaf in this film. I think maybe there's a problem with the Utah sort of water. Maybe there's some lead in the pipes that's causing some deafness, because really the parents are only just in the other room, really, aren't they? And at the end of it, Granddad's shouting, isn't he? In his warning, he's I think he's even laughing as they're pretty much opening the door to the living room.
He must have been taken to a soundproof room or something. They're right. He shouts, doesn't he? He's cackling and laughing, isn't he? And overacting.
Maybe the Doctor's a podcaster. He's got a sort of soundproofed studio there that he takes the guests to.
This could be it.
Maybe.
Yeah. I know I have a soundproof booth here in where I'm broadcasting from. I know you guys do. You got egg boxes up all over the wall.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's the only way.
Minimum requirement. The first 15 minutes, I watched it, and it got to the bit, obviously, where you have the attempted rape. And I watched this on Christmas Eve, and I just wasn't in the mood for it. I was like full of Christmas cheer. It was Christmas Eve. I had a couple of whiskeys in me. I just didn't want to watch somebody sort of being raped and a kid watching his mother being raped. And the throat, even though she doesn't actually get raped, she gets a throat slit, and obviously everybody in this movie who's killed has to have the obligatory shirt ripped off. I thought there were so many shirts being ripped off in this movie. I thought Hulk Hogan was going to pop out at some point. It was just absolutely ridiculous. So I just thought, I'm going to bin it, and then I came back to it a few days later when I was in a better mood and gave it a fairer hearing. And I don't know, I kind of feel like, am I taking this film a bit too seriously? Is it just made for teenagers? Is it it's almost like a cross between a slasher film and Porky's, isn't it? And I think there's not any well-rounded characters. They spend way too much in the first third of the film establishing the backstory. That could have been done very quickly with a couple of flashbacks. But they spend half an hour at the orphanage, don't they? I don't know what you thought. Do you think they sort of wasted a lot of time there?
In the orphanage scenes? Possibly. Well, this is the thing. One of the things about the film is I thought it was a film of two halves. I mean, I agree with you completely about the sexual assault scenes. They're always a turn off as far as I'm concerned. I mean, not they would be a turn on, but when they're placed in a film like this as well, which is, it's not a grand work of art. It's a film for for exploitation to make money, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine as well. But when they kind of throw in there's two sexual assault scenes in this film, and they're for me they're just completely unnecessary. I think the director was definitely a tip man, because I think we get to see the four different young ladies in states of undress through this film, which you got in those films, but I think the sexual assault was just unnecessary and kind of takes it too far. And I can certainly understand why, in the light of those scenes, that the film wasn't even presented for classification in Britain, because they would have known full well that they'd have taken those scenes out at a very minimum and possibly more. So for me, it's a film of two halves. Having said that, with those scenes there, the first half of the film is I think the build-up's quite good. We get to see the events that happen in poor Billy's life. I mean, he's a really kind of sad character, isn't he? And we get to kind of see him up to the point where he becomes this rampaging killer. But I felt that after that point, they kind of forgot about him. When he becomes a killer, there's no more sympathy for him. He's got no sympathy for anybody else. It completely forgets about his character. And it becomes almost like a series of vignettes.
I was confused about who I was supposed to be rooting for. I don't think there was anybody you could really root for in this film. I mean, up until the point he kills the girl who's being raped in the toy store, up until that point, you could possibly root for him, couldn't you? Maybe they could have took it in a different direction with him almost turning into a Dexter-style, serial killer. Going after maybe even, he doesn't even think about maybe trying to track down the killer of his parents, or maybe they could have took it in that direction, or certainly gone to the orphanage a bit sooner. But I just didn't feel like, I didn't really care about any of the characters. I mean, a lot of the kills, they just throw the character in, and then the character's killed within minutes, really seconds, and you're just like, oh well, whatever. It's just a bit of a cheap.
That's right. There's no development. It's vignettes. We're introduced to several characters with them, like having sex or being bullied out of their sleds. Like you said, there's no character development. It's almost like a series of sketches where and they're all punctuated by the Santa killer coming in and offing some of these supporting characters. Such as they are. Rob, what did you think?
I think the opening is quite good, actually. So when it first started it's and the build-up is gradual.
Yes.
And I quite like that. It's very few films you get the reason for somebody turning into a psychopath. You just straight away they just are a psychopath, especially a slasher film. And I thought that was pretty decent. But then when it starts to fail for me is when it starts going to TV movie nutsoid. So whenever Billy, whenever William is about to break, he's like cracking up. He does like this little eye up to the ceiling and a crooked mouth, and he starts holding his head. And it's like if like the old school like doing that windy finger at the side of your head to say someone's a bit nuts, and he starts doing all those things. And they keep on building up, the tension towards he's going to have to wear the Santa suit. Oh no, he's getting a bit tense. He's saying the wrong things to the children. It's built up well, and then like you said, it's like the film just does a massive shift. It like goes from that slow build up to just becoming a really quite a mundane slasher film. The second half, with lots of flashbacks of his mum's boobs. It's more. I mean, the bit at the beginning is quite. It's very brutal. His mum and dad, pulled over by this assailant at the side of the road with a gun. His dad's shot immediately, even though they've given. They're not putting up any fight. And his mum's top is ripped open, and these giant voluptuous boobs flop out. And then the guy doesn't do. The guy she slaps him, doesn't she? Doesn't she fight back a bit? And then he slashes her. he slashes her throat, and that scene, I think you see it about 6 or 7 times.
Especially in the
And
rated version, which I think we all saw, the unrated
Yeah.
version with the kind of the added gore before it was cut by the American censors. That we said before, didn't we, that it is quite graphic, and the special effects work is pretty good in this film. So it kind of makes it all the more kind of harrowing.
Billy, he's a boob man as well, isn't he? Because this has had an imprint on his life. He's a boob man because, like, he daydreams in his job about having sex with his co-worker, which is what even more of a surprise when he kills her. Because, like, he has this, like, really quite, it's like a tender moment where, like, they're both lying naked and he's caressing her, and then a Santa runs in the room and starts killing them both.
I mean, we might be talking kind of cinematic cliches here, but I mean, when he was about to kill the his co-worker, the girl, I did wonder if, like, a better film he'd have had a moment there where you thought, oh, perhaps I won't kill her. Should I kill her? A bit of conflict, but there doesn't seem to be any conflict there, and surely there would have been some.
He goes from being quite. He's not the most talkative, is he? In the job, is it? And there's a man who works in the shop as well who really hates him initially for no reason. He just goes about his job, and there's this really standoff argument between them. Who goes like, "What the fuck are you doing, man? I'm not doing fucking anything. Do you care about his fucking job? I don't care about his fucking job." And it's like they banter back and forth on his F words, how he's going to tell the toy shop owner about you messing around and dossing off on the job, and you know that the moment that argument happened, straight away I thought, "You're the first kill. You're the first kill." And I was thinking, how is he going to die? Is he going to die imaginatively? And when he snaps, he goes from he has no reason left, does he? So he literally goes to mumbling. He's mumble lines about, "Have you been a good boy?" And he quotes lines from "Was the Night Before Christmas."
Yeah.
He's got all the part down, all the psycho.
Yeah, there's no dialogue other than that, though, isn't it? There's just punish. That's it. There's no clever dialogue or anything like that.
It is a good line. I can't imagine. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger would probably have said no to that as one of his kind of catchphrases. Either "I'll be back" or "punish."
They missed so many opportunities. Like, and with that girl, like you said, if it was a better film, he probably would have reasoned with her. He would have said to her, he was trying to hurt you, because he stops that man from raping her. He would have said, "He was trying to hurt you, and I got carried away." But he doesn't even do. He's gone too far, hasn't he already?
Yeah,
and he guts her. He kills her quite brutally. I think it's probably one of the worst kills, isn't it? And he really close up on it. He uses a Stanley knife, or a parcel cutter in America, and that's how he kills her. And it's really, and that's when you get the special effects budget, and the version that we all saw, the quality changes of the light, doesn't it? So I think it's something to do with it. You said it's about the film footage was took out and then put back in, or
it was. So when it was released in America, the distributors wanted an R certificate, which meant that anyone could get in to see the film who was under 17 with an adult. Because in America they either had the other options were either having an X certificate, which people immediately thought meant it was a pornographic film, or it would go out unrated, which again would kind of cause a lot of people to kind of think, oh, why has this film not got a rating? So they wanted that R certificate. In order to get it, presumably they must have submitted it to the MPAA, which is the kind of the USA censorship board, and they must have demanded a list of cuts to all of the kills, I think, seem to suffer. Anyway, years later they found this unedited footage, but it had deteriorated. So in the unrated version that exists now, they've kind of assembled it all back together. But you'll notice that when the kills occur and there's a slightly gorier moment, then the quality of the footage just drops out just for a few seconds.
It really takes you out of the film, doesn't it? It takes you out of the moment and does spoil it to a degree. But I understand, that's the only footage they've got, and it's better to have that in because otherwise, what are you watching? It's just like it's Porky's if it doesn't have the gore in there, isn't it? So.
That's right. I didn't watch the disc that I watched, which is out from 101 Films in the UK. It does offer the kind of theatrical version on a separate disc, but I thought, well, there's no point in watching that because it's just going to be less of what I saw. And if it's not got the gore, this film, the kind of good gore effects, then it's one less plus point in its favour.
Also, Cal, you're a big tit man. and you would have seen less tits probably.
Well, I take all sizes. I'm not a big tit man.
He's a connoisseur.
I have to say,
I'm a
I
man
mean,
of the world.
it's not the filmmaker's fault, but you know, like when you're watching a slasher film, like, you know, when there's always a mirror scene, like, is the killer behind the mirror? Is the killer behind the door? Is the killer just going to appear over the shoulder?
Of course.
Because of the cut footage. Because of the cut footage, you know the kill's coming, and there's some good cuts. There's some good kills in it. I mean, we will talk about the kills. We have to, don't we? Because our favourite top 10 kills. And his he kills 8 people. I counted how many deaths. Ever since I watched Commando when I was a kid, I counted how many people die in the film. So there's 8 kills, and then if you include his mum and dad, that's 10 kills.
Yeah.
I don't know how many boobs there is. So there's his mum's boobs, his co-worker's boobs who you see twice, and then there's the babysitter's boobs, and it's about 8 different cuts.
There's the nun's boobs as well.
Oh yeah, the fit nun boobs. Yeah.
How many is that?
Yeah.
Is that 8? No, 4.
Yeah, the Mother Teresa's Mother Teresa.
I don't know. I've lost count. I always lose count when I'm counting these things.
But the Mother Superior is furious about those boobs, isn't she? They're the ones that push her over the edge, and she punishes. I mean, Billy, the trauma he's gone through. He's obviously had his parents murdered by this Santa guy, and then he's in an orphanage run by nuns, and he gets bullied by the Mother Superior. Literally, everything he does is counted as defiance. He gets locked in a cupboard. He gets beaten.
Tied to the bed, doesn't he?
So,
did either of you think this film in any way was like some kind of comment on the hypocrisy of the church? I mean, it crossed my mind. It must have crossed the scriptwriter's mind, I think, for maybe 10 seconds, because it's kind of utilized and then it's not played out. It's another thing that kind of they forget about later on. I don't know.
Probably why this. Yeah, it's probably why censors jumped on it. Yeah.
And also the state of mental health support in the States, really. If you've got no money, there is no really mental health support out there, is there? Or certainly there wasn't in the 80s.
Certainly.
It's like now. I don't think it's got much better now, has it really?
Yeah, the Mother Superior is a complete... she's a sadist, isn't she? Which is actually quite a common theme in a lot of films, isn't it? Where the... is it Catholic Boys? That's a film which always sticks in my mind. It's
1985, the following year. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Catholic Boys has this really brutal priest, doesn't he? Who completely beats all the boys, and they're plotting the revenge. But it's more of a comedy, that film. But this one, yeah, there's no comeuppance, is there, in this film as well? Like, Billy wants to get to her at the end. It's only explained to you that in exposition, man, who's the detective. Billy doesn't actually say, I want to kill the Mother Superior, but it's explained to you that that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets stopped just at the end, doesn't he? Just before he can swing the
He stop before he can kind of carry out his revenge.
I just wish there was more time spent there in the last third of the film, really. I mean, he spends more time outside dealing with the cop, doesn't he? And it would have been nice, perhaps, for him to break in at night and sort of even the Sister Margaret, is it? The other one who's sympathetic? I think maybe she should have come under some punishment as well. She kind of realised, I mean, the Mother Superior doesn't really realise what she's doing is wrong, but I think Margaret does realise that Billy's being mistreated and does very little about it, really. She sort of turns a blind eye. So it would have been maybe good for her to have had some comeuppance.
No, I was thinking about like the have you seen Carrie?
Yeah.
There's kind of a sympathetic character in Carrie, isn't there? And at the end of that film, where Carrie's kind of carrying out her kind of mission of vengeance at the end.
Oh, to the left of you.
There's one of the teachers who's kind of been slightly sympathetic towards her, but she doesn't spare her either. She,
she betrays her though, doesn't she? The sympathetic teacher, because
that's true.
When Carrie has the pig's blood poured on her, the teacher laughs. She laughs even though she knows she shouldn't.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I've not seen that for a while, but you're right about that. Yes, she does. And the final straw for her.
But in this film, the nice nun, she's a terrible work placement officer, isn't she? She puts him in the one.
The worst.
Yeah, you've been traumatized by Christmas. Let's put him in a frigging toy shop. You know, even she didn't know about the Santa suit, but she chooses a toy store at Christmas.
Yeah, but this is the thing, Rob and Lee. She places him in April. The film says it's April 1984, which, and the film's wrong here because it says 10 years later, but it's not quite 10 years later at this point. It's a bit less than 10 years. But anyway, we'll let that one pass.
9 years and 8 months.
So they place him in this toy shop in April 1984. Did they not think, oh, we've got 8 months. We've got 8 months, and we need to let the toy store owner know at some point not to have him involved, not to have Billy involved in any of this Christmas activity, and certainly whatever you do, don't dress him up as your store Santa Claus.
He should have come with some gremlin style instructions, shouldn't he? Of don't feed him water after midnight, don't put him in a Christmas suit. You know, come on.
Yeah, she's not a very good work placement officer. I think she kind of pretends that she cares. She talks a good game, and perhaps doesn't follow through.
Can we talk about the office party which happens, or the shop party at Christmas? Because I love this scene because like before Billy's about to crack, the Christmas party is basically him and his 4 co-workers, including the toy shop owner, basically just getting pissed at the.
Well, who wants to spend Christmas Eve evening with their workmates? Surely it's like, right, okay, you're on the other side of the door, locking it and saying, "Let's get pissed." You know, you're not on the inside. So did they just live there? Are they so poorly paid? Is Mr. Sims such a tightwad that they can't afford a flat and they just all live there?
Mr. Sims is the best because he immediately, as soon as the last customer's out the door, he turns around and says, "Let's get shit-faced." Doesn't care where. He wants to do it by the tills with all his co-workers standing right next to him, still in their work clothes for the rest of the night.
I get a feeling he's got a thing for the older woman who works in the store, hasn't he? Because it's just them two.
Mr. Sims.
It was all a ploy to get in her knickers, really, wasn't it? It was all, let's have a works do in the toy store. You know, I've got a chance.
To be fair,
possibly.
There's a point that he wanders over to Billy, does it? This bit cracked me up because there is some unintentional and intentional laughs maybe. But he wanders over to Billy, who's stood on his own, looking a bit manic, drinking for the first time, and he says to Billy, "You're having a good time."
Can I just mention something about Mr. Sims? Now, I thought originally Mr. Sims was like quite a nice, sympathetic character, and he is. And I thought, oh, this guy is not a bad actor. But I changed my mind completely when the actor who plays Mr. Sims, I don't know his name, is pretending to be drunk. He's the worst at pretending to be drunk in the world. I mean, surely this chap has been drunk or has seen people drunk, and the things that he's doing, they're not the actions of a drunk person at all. He's terrible. He's terrible. If you watch these scenes carefully, he's an awful acting drunk. And I don't understand why they didn't just get him drunk and do it that way.
I thought I recognised him from somewhere, and he's in Weird Science. He plays he's Greg's dad, I think, isn't he? He's the Al. I think he plays Al. Yeah, so I'm sure I've seen this guy from somewhere, but yeah, he's not. He's probably the actor who went on to have the best career after this film, but yeah, he's not a great actor at it. I agree.
He has quite a sudden death as well, doesn't he? He gets is it a knife to the head?
It's a hammer. He gets hammered, doesn't he?
He gets a hammer. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's a joke, about getting hammered. He gets.
Is that an American expression? Getting hammered at Christmas.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Our American listeners perhaps could help us out. Is getting hammered, a term for getting drunk? If you can reply to our Twitter account, then we'd like to know.
I think it is. Yeah, he leaves the hammer in the head, doesn't he? So because when the older woman discovers his body, he's still got the hammer planted in the skull. The first deaths are quite decent, aren't they? The first deaths is his colleague who Billy had a crush on, who he's been daydreaming about sleeping, decides like naively to go in the back with this complete like jock who says, "I've got a present for you in the back. It's a secret present." And she falls for it, and she goes in the back, and then he's like all over, isn't it? And it's just building up to like a really uncomfortable scene. And then Billy wanders in, and Billy at this point is cracked, hasn't he? And Billy gets the strength of Darth Vader. At this point.
He does like a choke slam almost on him, doesn't he? Yeah, and sort of strangles him with some Christmas lights.
Yeah, yeah. It's and then he turns around and the girl who he's had this thing for, for however long he's worked at the shop, suddenly sees him as a monster and he can't cope with that. So that's when he gets the parcel cutter and slices her. Carl mentioned something before we started this that like apparently the director wanted to do Christmas Kills all the way through.
And this is one of the extras, which is on the 101 disc, and he
Yeah.
explained that he wanted to kind of use some kind of Christmas paraphernalia for each murder, but this is the only one I think that that actually. So the first guy, the co-worker, is killed by Billy hanging, kind of lifting him up and kind of hanging him effectively with Christmas lights. I think that's the only one, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
it's,
every other murder is either a knife or an axe or.
I suppose you could say I mean, the killing somebody on a sleigh is a little bit Christmas themed, isn't it? I guess.
Ho, ho, ho.
Is it sledging, sleighing, or sledding? I think it's sledding if it's downhill, isn't it?
You just reminded me, the original title for this film, as scripted, was Sleigh Ride. Later on, was it kind of
was it?
rechristened Silent Night, Deadly Night? Presumably, they must have thought it was a bit more commercial. But yeah, it was written and nearly completed as a Sleigh Ride. In fact, the company that produced it is called Sleigh Ride Productions.
It's one of the better kills, is it? The sleigh ride, because it's a hilarious scene. Actually, it cuts to these guys in the 20s. The guys in the 20s who are supposed to be teenagers or little kids, who were then accosted by two blokes in the 30s, who were like the town bullies, who bully them to take their sleigh, and then as he's going down the hill, Billy stood at the side, ready to lop his head off, and it's really done that scene a bit like it reminded me of the Omen. Is it the Omen 2 or the Omen, the one with the glasses, the sheet of glasses? Cuts the guy's head off?
The Omen, the first one with it's David Warner's character, isn't it? Sorry, spoiler alert, everyone.
But anyway, that it was so reminding me of that scene, and then of course the sleigh continues down the hill, and his mate's waiting at the bottom of the hill, and his mate is cheering, can't make it out, and then eventually sees the headless torso, and then the head manages to roll all the way down. Does Billy throw it? You don't see.
Yeah,
that.
the model head has come kind of, someone throws it down the hill after him.
That was a good throw, wasn't it? That was a decent throw from a little bit. I suppose Billy's pretty strong, isn't he? Because he can lift people with one arm.
Rob, you said before in our little kind of pre-record conversation that he'd kind of. I wonder if they were inspired by Star Wars because it's almost like the Darth Vader choke lift, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also is it the Vulcan death grip as well? I think old Spock old Spock can do it because he doesn't know. Also, they're definitely inspired by Friday the 13th, aren't they? Because like there's and those type of films. Because there's a kill in with this babysitter where he lifts her. She's actually the prettiest girl in it, isn't she? And he hoists her. And then he mounts her on a. It's done in shadow at first. He's mounting onto this stag with its horns, and then it cuts to the film deteriorates in quality then, and it cuts to like the horns piercing through her.
Again, I think the sleigh kill is the best one. But that's another interesting one, kind of having kind of mounting someone on the wall on stag's antlers. Yeah,
I wanted to see him use the axe more, but we don't really see it till sort of much later in the film. I mean, he throws it after, I mean, that's such a bad choice, isn't it, to throw your weapon? I think always.
An interview with the actress on the disc that I watched as well, and she said that they actually threw an axe, which was like feet away from her head. Because it was a relatively low budget production. They actually threw it. This actress is called Linnea Quigley, and she kind of made a little name for herself as an actress who appears in different horror films as kind of a screaming victim with obvious other assets, being things like Return of the Living Dead and a stack of other films that were kind of all horror.
They did the counter kills earlier. I missed one out. The really innocent kill in it, which is like they know that Billy's coming to the orphanage dressed as Santa, so they know there's a killer coming dressed as Santa, and there's an innocent priest, isn't there, dressed as Father Christmas, and there's this gun happy policeman who just blows him away.
Oh yeah. And he's deaf, isn't he? He shouts at him or something. He doesn't stop. And they said, "Oh, it's Father Maguire. He's deaf. Of course he won't stop." Yeah, I mean, it is, there's dark comedy. That's not escaped me. It is darkly comedic at times. And I did laugh.
I quite like that part where the father is shot and they think it's him until they turn him over. And they kind of realise from the description that it's not the killer. I thought that was quite a nice little touch, actually, late on, because there wasn't really anything else going on.
And it's not a unique idea. It's something that's done like in Halloween 2, isn't it? Where the character accidentally gets killed, or is it the guy dressed as in the costume? But it was a good touch, that I think.
Well, I was going to say, what I didn't get though is the fact is that most people. I know it's not realism, but most people, if you just shot someone, an innocent person, you'd be a bit gun shy by them, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd be a bit you'd be keeping it locked away. You put your gun down. You'd be a bit ashamed of yourself. This guy in front of all the kids is straight out there again with his gun, isn't he? He's holding his gun aloft and he's wandering around and he's wandering in a basement with his gun and he's ready to blow anyone who moves. And he gets an axe to his belly for his troubles, doesn't he?
He does. I suppose he gets his penance for shooting an innocent man.
I once read something about it. It's like almost a film director's creed thing, or in a plot you can do in an action movie or something. To designate someone as the bad guy, you have them kick the dog. So basically, if they do something totally abhorrent on screen, then it justifies their murder. So it's a bit like that guy's blown away the father, so it's okay now. He can get an axe to the belly. We don't. It's not like an Austin Powers. It doesn't cut to his family at home. He's got 2 kids waiting at home for him. But
funnily enough, it's the Mother Superior who kind of talks the policeman down for having shot the father accidentally, and she's been more than hypocritical, isn't she? Because she's kind of inflicted all that evil on Billy throughout the years. Yeah, so again, alluding to her hypocrisy as well.
Do you think she's softening you? Because obviously in the future, in present day when the film's set, the time when the film's set, she's now in a wheelchair, isn't she? And she seems to be a bit kinder to the children, and she, especially Billy's brother, who she says he's a good boy, nothing like his brother.
She's not seen part 2, clearly. So I don't think any discussion of this film would be complete without talking about the censorship that it suffered, not just in the UK, which we might be more familiar with, but also in the United States when this film came out, because it was released by TriStar Pictures in America, and at the time they were kind of an up-and-coming independent studio who ended up producing lots of different films. They were owned by Columbia. And after the release of this film, or more accurately perhaps after the release of a trailer for this film, there was a huge kind of outcry against it in America, and people were standing outside cinemas with boards and placards saying things like Santa Claus is not a serial killer. It really did kind of generate some bad publicity. In fact, there was a review by Siskel and Ebert where they said that the producer of this film had blood money on there, had blood on their hands from making this film, which I thought was a reaction.
Yeah, I watched that review, and I watched the review, and they name and shame the writer, the producer, the director, and they do it twice in the review.
There was some connection to Coke as well. I think like Coke owned shares or something, or owned TriStar, and I think obviously they were trying to build up this image of connection to Christmas, weren't they? So as soon as they saw the backlash of against a Christmas themed slasher film, they pulled it straight away, didn't they?
I mean, in terms of the box office, this cost less than $1 million to make this film, and you probably guessed that when you watch it. But it did pull in its opening weekend like $2.5 million. So I mean, it made a fair profit. I did read something else that said TriStar had predicted that if this film had kind of been granted a full release, it would have made about $20 million. And Lee or Rob, one of you said before that this outgrossed in its first week A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was released at the same time, which is just incredible to think about. I mean, if you look at the 2 films,
it did have a wider release as well, I think, than that film. I think it was on 200 or 400 screens or something like that, quite a wide release. But yeah, I think it made sort of 1.5, I think, just in the first week, I think, at least.
And it was withdrawn, never to be kind of seen again. Well, not until kind of a home video release. And Lee, I think you were right, because the TriStar company was owned by Columbia, which was a major, who is still a major, of course. It's owned by Sony now. But at the time, it was owned by Coca-Cola. And of course, Coca-Cola associated with, especially at Christmas time, with Father Christmas, big jolly red Santa.
Holidays are coming. Holidays are coming.
Billy is a coming. Punishment is coming.
We didn't talk about the made-up Christmas songs that they sing in this. Santa's creeping. Now you're sleeping. Santa's coming. I can't remember. They sing together. Like,
Now you're dying.
Do you think they made up the songs? Because is there really copyright on any classic Christmas songs? Like, they could have at least done a Christmas Carol song.
Yeah,
couldn't
am
they?
I right that they didn't even use Silent? Did they not even use Silent Night in this film? I don't remember hearing it. Yeah, I'm sure that won't
They
be
do.
right.
But they use Clement Attlee, doesn't it? Because when he's in the house, he's doing the night before Christmas, isn't he? He does that as he's creeping around the house.
but if you think about it, like even the song "Happy Birthday" has an accredited writer. Like, if you use the song "Happy Birthday" in something, you need to pay royalties to someone who, I don't know who it was, but someone who wrote it. So maybe lots of the Christmas songs also, like "Have Yourself a Merry Christmas," comes from an MGM musical. I think it's "Meet Me in St. Louis" with Judy Garland, and so that must have a songwriter who needs some royalties.
Santa's creeping, you sleep.
We did get that famous Christmas song, "Warm Side of the Door,"
The door, that's just weird, isn't it?
and it was the one that was used for the montage where he's employee of the month, and he's just there. He's like high fiving everybody.
I mentioned it in the kind of summary of the plot before. This is when things are very briefly going well.
The weird thing is that since you sang it, it's like an earworm now. I've got it in my head now. I can't shake it. Santa's creeping. Now you're sleeping. Santa's humming. Now you're bumming.
Sing it to all the family. It's fun for all the family.
Can we talk about one of the kills in the toy shop? Because I know that Lee, you said you were fascinated with all the toys. I was fascinated. The fact is that you can kill a woman with a children's toy bow and arrow. You can shoot an arrow through her stomach.
That not only went into the flesh, but it went all the way through her. That had to be a sharpened, hunting arrow. What is that? I mean, maybe they've got a rabbit problem in the back.
Do you think Ira's Toys is a subsidiary of Walmart or something? You can get your guns from there, can't you? Perhaps you can buy a bow, a high-powered bow and arrow as well.
Yeah,
this is a precursor to Nerf guns, isn't it? This is like
yeah, the Nerf axe. Yeah, I kind of forgive it for having an axe. Yeah, maybe they're breaking down boxes in the back or something. But yeah, I think the bow and arrow was a bit.
Yeah, it's incredible because he's also he's not he's not testing the water with killing, is he? It's like it was a slowly approach, but once he starts to kill, he starts to really enjoy it, doesn't he? He really gets into it.
I can tell from these blank facial expressions all the way through the film.
So the actor who plays Billy 18 is a guy called Robert Brian Wilson, and from what I garnered in the Blu-ray extras on this, that he was picked. He was not an actor. I can't remember what background he was from, but he was not an actor. And I think, considering, he's
his physique,
stacked. They must have picked him for that. But I think he did okay. He's not awful in the role. He's not fantastically brilliant, but I think he's okay. I think a better film would have possibly served him a little better. I don't know. What did you think about his performance, you two?
I think he's okay. I mean, I'm going to go with what Dommy T said below. Whenever you look up a film on Wikipedia and there's a few quotes from people on the internet, Dommy T says, "Good nudity and gory parts too. I wish it was a bit more camp, but that's not the style of this one." But what I will say of his performance is that he has this somebody. I read a review where somebody says he's got a W-shaped mouth. Yeah. Well, I don't know what that W-shaped mouth is, but I suppose it's like a grin and a malice at the same time. I suppose, isn't it? And he has that look all the way through, and he's got these rosy red cheeks, which is in the first flush of youth. Yeah, he's not given any dialogue, is he? He's hardly given any dialogue early in the film.
Yeah.
When he becomes 18, they don't really give him much chance to do that. Maybe early on in the toy shop scenes, where he starts his job, but they don't give him much chance to kind of play on that.
Not in a pervy sense. I wanted him to have a failed romantic liaison with that girl. Before it got to the point where because he's like daydreaming about it, and she likes him, doesn't she? She always smiles and chatting to him, and I thought there's going to be like a failed moment because he just can't because he's been too traumatized. But that doesn't happen. She just completely falls for that complete idiot who works in the shop, his supervisor, and that's what leads Billy down the sticky path he goes on.
I thought he just seemed like a fairly generic Saved by the Bell type character. He reminded me of the blonde actor. I can't remember his name out of Saved by the Bell.
What's it called? Who's the main character, the main lead in it?
He can't.
Zach. Zach, he was called Zach,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
That's it. It was a
And
bit like that, but maybe he would have played like a typical teen movie quite well. But I just didn't think he
Yeah.
menace. He didn't seem menacing. He couldn't act menacing. He had hardly any dialogue. Maybe that was good. He had very little dialogue, but I think he was mainly there for his body, showing off those guns that gave him his superhero strength. Maybe he could have been like a superhero, but he's got the same backstory as Batman, hasn't he? Maybe he could have become a Santa superhero.
It's not quite the same backstory as Batman. It's not quite the same.
Do you not remember that bit with the tits?
Batman, he took a shortcut down an alley after seeing a movie, and then his mum and dad get a shot, and his necklace falls to the ground. And this one, the only necklace is a pearl. There's no epiphany where he suddenly looks in the mirror and goes, "I'm gonna wipe the scum from this earth." There's none of that, is it? It's just he just basically has to wear a Santa suit, and that's too much, and he cracks.
We talked about this a little earlier, which is in Ira's toy shop. There are toys. Now, this film was shot in Utah in early 1984, and we talked a little bit about the toys that can be seen on the shelves of Ira's toy shop. The one that caught my eye was the Star Wars Jabba the Hutt, kind of with Jabba the Hutt, and it's kind of the throne that he sits on as well, with like the kind of the servile female creature.
Muba Duba Billy.
Yeah, I was more focused on the Krull board game. I didn't even know that exists, and it came out I think in 1983, so that would have been a brand new toy back then, and that's quite a valuable. I mean, I was really distracted by these toys in the background. I was more focused. Maybe that's why I don't like the movie. Maybe I was more focused on looking up on eBay what everything was worth, and also panicking when people were fighting. Don't get blood on the boxes. These are collector's items.
No, that's what I love about seeing some of these films. They're just like very commonplace things which is of such great value these days. But back in the day, you never thought that, did you? Like looking at a Jabba the Hutt model, you never thought that
exactly.
that'd be worth thousands.
Some of the other things I saw, like there was some Muppet things, and goodness me, I mean, just imagine taking a time machine back to that toy shop back then and just having a look around. Goodness me, you'd clear up, wouldn't you? You really would. Or the toy shop would anyway. One of the other things I probably need to speak about is the censorship in the UK of this film and its sequel, because we mentioned earlier the number of tits that are in this film, and I think the problem for the UK censors was that in the 1980s, and probably still to some degree now, a big problem for the UK censors of BBFC is nudity with violence at the same time.
No tits, please, we're British.
Tits and violence at the same time is this massive no-no. Films rather like heavily cut that had scenes, even if breasts had like blood splashed on them or something like that, they would be cut. So I can think of a few scenes in this where the BBFC would have just said, no, that needs to go. So I do wonder if perhaps they considered releasing it here and then looked at the material and thought, no, they're not going to pass it. So we in the UK didn't get the opportunity, whether it's a good thing or not, we didn't get the opportunity to see it until I think it was released on an Arrow video Blu-ray in 2009 originally, completely uncut. Of course, now we've got the 101 Films Blu-ray, which is probably as good a release as you'll get.
Apparently, it was quite difficult to find, wasn't it? Pre-2012, I think the talk of the remake brought out. Obviously, they decided to re-release it, but yeah, I think it was out of print for many years, wasn't it? Probably quite collectible.
I've not seen the remake. The remake's called, if anyone's interested, listen, it's called Silent Night. It doesn't have the Deadly Night bit, and apparently it's very similar. It doesn't have the whole backstory, but the plot is somebody in a Santa suit going around killing, which is, it just goes cut straight to the meat of it, I suppose, without the build-up. They made five films of this series.
Incredible
Series.
How did this flimsy format make 4 sequels? Although I did hear that sequels, installments number 4 and 5 were kind of like Halloween 3 type sequel, where there was no kind of connection to the events of the previous films, just kind of Christmas themed horror films.
But there is a massive niche for people to complete the series, isn't it? I mean, it's like me with Friday the 13th. I think I've seen most.
Have you seen Jason X?
I've probably seen them all. and some of them, I don't need to see them, but you feel that you have to, because if you haven't, you've cheated yourself out of the series. So it's like Jason, so it's probably the same with this series. Like, there is some people who generally love this film.
Yeah, I think we should say that originally we'd planned to do kind of a double feature for this episode, which is Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and 2. Having viewed Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, there's an old saying where if you've seen one, you've seen them all. Well, this is certainly true of Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, which incorporates no less than 40 minutes of film from the first film in its 88-minute running time. So like the first 40 minutes of Part 2 is like a flashback from the brother's perspective, but he can't, how can he possibly recollect the things that his brother did? He can't. So that's nonsense to start with. And then after that footage has kind of been used up, what they do is they get the brother character, who's now 18 or whatever. They kind of give him a few little vignettes where he's had encounters with girls, or he's killed people, and he's confessing all this to his psychiatrist. He ends up kind of killing the psychiatrist and going on a rampage trying to find Mother Superior. But goodness me, I can understand from the producer's perspective what they were thinking of. They thought, we've got all this lovely film that we can just use. Let's bang it all in there. And then we want to shoot a few scenes on top of this. It's not good. And the lead actor in it, again, not an actor, I found out originally. And he was given different opposing ways to play by the director and the producer. The director told him to kind of play it low key and kind of straight, and the producers say, no, we need some kind of quips like Freddy Krueger. So his performance is kind of all over the place, and he kind of like it's a kind of performance where he kind of cocks his head back and goes ha 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 ha, and then moves on to the next killing and his slaughter. Yeah, it's not good. I mean, I can't imagine if you can get past, if you can watch Part 2. Fair play to you. I managed it just about, but goodness me, it's a long 88 minutes. It's been made famous, of course, for a famous meme or GIF, which you might sometimes see, where the character says, "It's garbage day," and he shoots someone randomly through a dustbin. But it's not a good film, not at all. But yeah, Part 2's there if people want to watch it.
My favorite. I was just thinking about murder quips from horror films I've seen. My favorite was always, it wasn't a murder actually, but it's Nancy Kruger running through the school corridors in her dreams. And Freddy's the school cleaner. He's the janitor, and he turns around and goes, "No running in the hall, Nancy."
Now, the writer of this film, we kind of discussed before, it's kind of a film of two halves. The writer of the film did say that he concentrated more on the backstory of the Billy character in his script, and then when it kind of got to the part where he kind of goes over the edge and starts the massacre, then the script kind of became a bit less important. I think that definitely shows in this film. And one of the other interesting things he said was that he was obsessed by The Shining. He's a big kind of Stanley Kubrick fan. He was obsessed by The Shining when he was writing this film, and this explains the influence behind the grandfather and Billy scene at the start, which was comparable to the scene in The Shining where the boy and the kind of caretaker at the hotel, they can both shine. They can talk to each other and using their shining abilities. And he said that the scene with the grandfather and the boy was kind of a bit of a nod to that. And also, it might explain why there's so many killings by kind of axe in this film, as in The Shining, where he picks off the poor janitor, doesn't he? He didn't see that one coming, but.
So what's it gonna be, boys? Does this one rot in the morgue, or make it on the helicopter to freedom?
Okay, so guys, I'm going to go last. I'm not sure how this vote will go. I'm pretty sure how this vote will go. But you this time, what do you think? Do we consign Silent Night, Deadly Night to the morgue, or do you have a different fate in store for it?
Okay. For all the virtue of doing the backstory of a killer, which the only other film I think I can recall that happening is the latest Psycho. Is it Psycho 4?
Psycho 4, the beginning, was a really good entry, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that one. Yeah.
So Psycho 4 does that with Norman Bates. but this is not in the same ballpark as that. I mean, it really is. I mean, I can understand Lee getting drifted away with the toys. I mean, I got drifted away thinking about the fashion of boobs. I literally spent about 30 minutes of the film thinking how boobs have changed over time. How have boobs changed? How has people's shape changed? Shape fascinations of boobs changed over time because they're quite wholesome. His mum's at the beginning quite fulsome, and then there's more peaky ones.
All right, isn't there?
I think some of them might be augmented by plastic, but who
Yes,
knows?
Yeah.
yeah, 80s plastic boobs, but then the style of the boobs, it differs all the way through the film. But then when we get back to the actual film, it's like all the premise. I mean, it's quite slow at the beginning actually, but then once the killing kicks in, it's really run of the mill slasher. Some of the killings, I mean, the effects are okay, and it's a shame that what happened to the original footage and everything and the deterioration because the version I saw it went to like sepia. It was almost like watching Godfather 2. It went to sepia whenever there was a kill. So, it was basically you may as well put a sign on a sign on the screen saying "Rob, here comes a kill," and for that, I was removed from the film completely. It's a short film. I mean, I give it that. It's not. At least I knew I wasn't in for like 3 hours. And then when I knew for this podcast that we had to watch two of them, I was so.
Yeah, I was worried.
We dropped that idea pretty quickly after having watched the first one, and I watched the second one, as you know, and
Yeah.
yes, you did the right thing, guys. I'll take that bullet for this episode because it was my choice of film. Goodness me!
I
Oh
had
god,
so-
it's awful. It's the second one. Goodness me! Sorry, I digress. But Rob, carry on.
Yeah, I had so little energy when the film ended, and I'm quite a night owl anyway. I watch a lot a lot of sheets in a row, but literally that wiped me out. I was done, and I turned it off, and I sat there. I actually watched the end credits because sometimes modern films and modern series are obsessed with shoving something on at the end, and there was nothing at the end. But I sat there like a dickhead. I sat there like a dickhead.
The universe type ending with Skeletor.
I sat there like a dickhead, expecting the killer's eyes to open at the end or some crap. But none of that happened. And so as far as the morgue and the helicopter to freedom, it's completely consigned to the morgue. It's consigned to the morgue, and it's battered, dreary Santa suit. They couldn't even do the trading places Santa, with like the wine stains in the beard. It's not necessarily his fault. He's not given any dialogue to work with, so it's in the morgue. His sack's empty. He's not done any deliveries. And what I'll take away from the film, is the hilarious last word of the brother. The last word. The film ends on the younger brother who's just seen his older brother being killed, and the mother superior shaking him off her. And the last word he shouts, "Naughty." And I echo those words for this film. I shout at the director of this film and the writer and everyone else, "Naughty." So, sadly, it takes a lot for me to put something in the morgue. I mean, I saved over the top. I'll try to. So I'll put this film. It's in the morgue. It's in the morgue. Sadly.
Thanks, Rob. So that's one vote for the morgue this week for Silent Night, Deadly Night. Lee, what were your overall thoughts on this film?
Well, I feel like I've just been slagging it off all episode, really. But there were things that I enjoyed in there. Some of the kills were quite unique. Particularly the antler kill, where he holds them up like the Darth Vader grip that we were discussing earlier, and the sleigh kill. So I can understand why it's a cult movie. It's got the grandpa bit at the start has most people in stitches, I think, when you see that, even though it is quite chilling as well at the same time. So I understand it's a bit of a dark comedy. It's supposed to be titillating for the teenage audience. It's not made for middle-aged people to see for the first time. But ultimately,
Like you.
We call him middle-aged.
so you're supposed to have characters though that you needed somebody to root for. You needed the only character I felt that was rounded out properly was Billy. They spent half an hour, a third of the movie really, on fleshing out his backstory. Way too long in my opinion. I think they should have spent more time perhaps in a toy shop establishing who those characters were. They're very like 2D characters, weren't they? Terrible acting. I don't think there was. Maybe you could say Britt Leach was okay. I mean, I know you criticised his drunk acting, but yeah, he was kind of.
Watch it again, seriously.
Maybe I need to watch that again. But he did go on to have a decent career. I can understand what they were trying to do. I think they were just trying to create a shock movie, something that would garner word of mouth and sell well, and I think have some memorable scenes. And I think we got that. We got some Christmas themed killings, didn't we? But it was way too over the top with the tits. Yeah, it was kind of, what am I watching here? Is it Porky's? Should I be watching this with a box of Kleenex by the side of the sofa or something? I wasn't too sure.
Emotion stuff.
Emotion for tears, of course, for tears. But I was left pretty empty by the end of it, but not in that way, I must add, just emotionally empty, because we didn't get the payoff at the end as well, did we? Mother Superior didn't get, Mother Teresa, as you call her, Rob, didn't get her comeuppance at the end.
She didn't get killed.
So it was rather drab ending, really. Yeah, we got the Ricky only seemed to have been there to provide the film a sequel, didn't he? The little brother.
Right.
It was a pretty vacuous film.
Naughty.
But memorable. It probably is one that will live long in my memory, but I will not be visiting the sequels or any of the remakes or anything. So yeah, I've been preparing a nice little place for this in the morgue. We've been preparing all week for it, really. So we've got it a nice room, Christmas themed room, obviously.
We can decorate it, can't we, with tinsel and
lots
some
Lots of tits everywhere.
tree.
So yeah, it's sadly it's going straight in the slammer. So what about you? Over to you, Carl.
Oh, thanks, guys. Well, you've kind of left me with the task of trying to save it from the morgue. However, I'm not going to, because I this is one of those films that's kind of got a more interesting story behind it than when you watch the film. Of course, it was the subject of lots of debate and anger when it came out in America. People were protesting against it. Apparently, this was because of a daytime commercial for the film that ran on TV, and it showed Santa Claus kind of carrying an axe, or the character being Santa Claus wearing an axe, and this caused lots and lots of protests outside cinemas that were showing the film, and led to it being kind of swiftly withdrawn. I think it was after 2 weeks. It was withdrawn completely from cinemas. And this was quite a big release because it came from TriStar, and they were a subsidiary of Columbia Pictures, who were in turn owned by Coca-Cola, who we speculate before might have been behind the negative attitude that the film kind of showed towards the festive period, which obviously Coca-Cola is very invested in that. And yeah, I watched it with its interesting kind of censorship history. Of course, in the UK, it's been completely unavailable, so I was curious on that respect as well, up until very recently. But yeah, I watched it on Christmas Eve, and the thing that got me about this film was that it's not, although it's set at Christmas, it doesn't feel like a Christmas film. And I know it's a horror film, it's not Home Alone, but I was thinking back to other festive horror films, like Lee mentioned before, Christmas Evil, but the one I was thinking of in particular was Black Christmas, which despite being, first of all, classic horror film, one of the best, it feels festive. It feels like a Christmas movie. It's clearly set at Christmas, whereas this, I didn't feel like I was in, apart from when the killer becomes Santa Claus, I mean, that's basically it, and there's some snow. But even Ira's Toy Shop didn't seem to be particularly festive, despite some kind of eerie-looking nutcrackers and some other kind of gargoyle-looking Santa Clauses and things like that. So generally speaking, I was curious to watch it, but having seen it, I find it kind of quite distasteful. And I'm not like a prude. I enjoy horror films, slasher films, but lots of this, it just didn't appeal to me. I wanted some kind of redemption for Billy. I was kind of invested in him, especially for the first half an hour or so. And I wanted to see him either, get some revenge or show some kind of human qualities after he'd kind of gone over the edge. And we just didn't get any. It kind of just, Billy's this little boy. He has this horrible message from his grandfather. His parents are killed. He has a horrible time at an orphanage. And what happens to him? He turns into a killer and gets shot. There's nothing there. It's not an arc. It's not a character arc.
Yeah.
No,
Starts from the top of a cliff and he just comes down and down and down. There's nothing for him. And even at the end, his little brother is like, oh, he's going to be the next killer because he's, it's freeze framed on him saying naughty.
It just looked like people looking around. Just people looking around at all the other films out at the time and the money that can be made and cashing in on it and churning it out and just giving up on the idea. If they don't add some conviction and stuck with the development, we could have ended up with a half decent film.
Rob, you said that's a really good point because the writer of this film, in one of the special features on the Blu-ray that I watched, said that he was given a kind of a writing brief and the brief he was given was at the end, the killer is wearing a Santa Claus outfit and he's it's a slasher film. So he went back and worked on like the build up to it, but not so much on the kind of the parts after that. So for me, it's totally a film two halves. It begins with so much promise. I think that it could have we've discussed it, we could have gone off in so many other different directions, given a bit more sympathy and empathy to the Billy character, who really is a victim. He's kind of a victim in all this. Mother Superior gets away with everything and she's the real evil of the picture. And it just didn't. Overall, it just didn't appeal to me. It didn't click with me. And I'm a big fan of films from this period, like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. And
Pink.
Films. We talked about Terror Train and New Year's Evil, and I love films like that. They're really inventive and creative. But this one, it just kind of struck me cold. And of course, the kind of the sexual violence on top really just kind of turned it into not for me. And I'm sorry. I appreciate the art, and there is artistry in this film, but I'm going to have to consign Silent Night, Deadly Night to the morgue. So you join the illustrious company of I can't remember the other one now. There are lots of
Fanatic.
Fanatic. It's like the end of a Police Squad episode where they'd list everyone who they put into jail in like the previous weeks.
The weepy moment at the Oscars where they play the sad music and they show everyone who died, but we show all the films we put in the morgue.
I would say this is one of our longest pods for a while, so clearly there was a lot to talk about here. It is kind of quite a thought-provoking.
It's a cult film. It's got an interesting history. It's not like Pay Dirt that has fuck all history, nothing to it.
At the very least, you're going to see lots of tits. so if you do watch it.
Well, I think that's consigned to the morgue then. That's three strikes and out. So I can't remember whose turn is it for a film choice next.
It's my turn. I've already decided. Yeah. So
can you perhaps let us in on your decision?
Yeah, episode 11 is one of my favourite sci-fis from the 70s, which is Logan's Run. Again, you get some boobs in this film, but I just love the film. I mean, I'm hoping, I've not seen it for quite a few years, I'm hoping it's not going to be one of those I go back and I see loads of missed faults. I don't think I will. I think it's a great one. So Logan's Run. Anyone who's over the age of 30, you go into Carousel. But
That'll be us three then.
That means I'd already be dead.
You're going to get suspended above like a circuit and shot.
To our younger listeners, yeah, we'll have a black stone on our hand. To our younger listeners, you can be runners, so you'll be fine. Yeah. If you've not seen Logan's Run, by the way, before we do our pod, please go out there and watch it. It's such a classic. So, yeah, Logan's Run's episode 11.
Can I just say there's a really good, if you're in the UK, there's a really good Logan's Run Blu-ray available at the moment, which is part of the HMV premium collection. And I think it's, if you buy it with another film, you can get two Blu-rays for £15. Logan's Run is one of them. So Rob and Lee, if you're interested. I've got a copy which I bought ages ago and I've not watched.
Are we sponsored by HMV, Carl? Are you withholding this sponsorship money from the?
No, not at all. But it's I think I mentioned it the other day for Krull. Seriously, guys, go to HMV's website and get Krull and Logan's Run for £15. Don't wait. Do it now.
That sounds good.
They're both nice editions as well, like Lee's old Silent Run.
My brother used to know every word to Krull. That was his claim to fame. He used to be able to recite Krull as it played on the TV, which was quite
Wow.
boring to sit
Skill.
near him. But yeah,
Krull was on it before. It must have been like late in 1983. So
Yeah.
that ties in with the filming of Silent Night, Deadly Night in early '84. Yeah.
So this is closing episode 10, isn't it?
It's
So
closed.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone who's made it through all 10 episodes, well done to you. There's not a badge in the post, but well done. And happy New Year, everyone.
For the vintage year, hope you've all enjoyed it. Hopefully, we'll have a better one next year.
Yeah.
Here's the 10 more episodes from the Manchester Movie Morgue team.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you all, guys. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.